Hello friends and welcome to Share Them Smiles. I'm Alyssa and today I'm going to be doing an April wrap up. Before we get started, yes, that is Santa in my pocket. It says believe it. I realize this is an April wrap up. I originally thought I was going to change because that might be kind of weird, and I was like, you know what, we're all quarantined and I deserve to be comfortable, so I'm keeping it on. Hopefully it doesn't bother you too much. But yeah, so now let's jump into what this video actually is about. This is, again, my April wrap-up. For being quarantined for a month, I thought I was doing a lot of reading, and then I went back and saw how much reading I did, and I actually only finished 8 books, so, which is a lot for me at this time of year, because usually I'm in a classroom teaching preschool, and I'm still doing some of that online, but it's not quite as intense, like, as other like age groups for sure. Like I basically do like something for small for like a week as opposed to every day. But like shout out to the teachers who are doing all of that because that's amazing. I'm also filming this and it is Teacher Appreciation Week. So know that I know a lot of teachers and I know that they are putting in a lot of hard work. And so I appreciate all of you. If you're a teacher and happen to be watching this. Back to what I was saying, since we've been home, I've kind of gone in spurts of I'm really into reading and spurts of I'm not super into reading. So that's why we ended up with 8 books. However, they've been overwhelmingly pretty high. We've got a couple 5 stars. We've got mostly 4 stars and there is a 2-star that's snuck in there. But if you understand me in my reading style, I think that it's going to be kind of obvious when that 2-star comes up. Anyway, I'm going to go in order of when I read these. So the first book I finished in April is Little Do We Know by Tamara Ireland Stone. This book is about 2 friends. We follow Hannah and Emery. They live next door to each other and they were best friends, and something happened, and since then there's been a falling out. They're not talking to each other or anything. And then Emery's boyfriend has like a medical emergency and Hannah finds him in front of her house. And so then it kind of delves into the emotional aftermath of that moment for all 3 of these characters, and it talks about kind of their relationships to each other, how those change from this moment. It was, I thought, really well done. It's a young adult book and it was kind of exactly what I needed at the time that I read it. So it is almost very feel good. It's definitely a coming of age story. It ticks a lot of those boxes as you're reading it. However, I thought it was done in a very good way. It deals with these major issues. This book had me smiling, it had me near tears, it dealt with some really tough stuff, including faith and personal beliefs and sexual assault. It was all very well done. I started this month off right with this book. It ended up being a 5-star read for me. Also, the way that it got picked, I have a jar, and in that jar I have all the different little slips of every book I own, and if I can't decide what I want to read next, I just pull a book out of the jar, and that's how I got to this one, and I'm glad I did, because actually I don't even think this is my book. I think it's Jocelyn's and I just ended up borrowing it, but I loved it and highly recommend it. The next book that I read this month was lent to me by one of my coworkers who actually lends me a fair amount of books, and that is The Rumor by Leslie Cara. In this story, we follow Joanna, and Joanna has somewhat recently moved back home to the town she grew up in to raise her son, along with like her mother and having her family around to help out. Her son's father is still in the picture. They were friends who had a kid together, but she just felt like having the supportive home was important, and so she moved back. Once she moved back, this rumor started that this young girl who ended up actually killing one of the kids in her neighborhood and being arrested has since grown up, been released and has moved to this town. And it really follows the idea of what spreading rumors can do, how big a rumor can get, how out of control it can get. It's definitely more of a thriller, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very well written. I thought it was very believable and suspenseful throughout a majority of it. However, when it got to the ending, there were just some things that in my mind kind of took away the believability of it, and it was interesting. It was a good book. However, the ending just really didn't live up to the rest of the book for me, which is why I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars instead of a true 5. But if you do enjoy thrillers, I would suggest The Rumor. The next book that I pulled out of the jar was The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie. This is Agatha Christie's first book, and it's also the first in the Hercule Poirot, series. In this book, we actually start by following Mr. Hastings, I believe is his name, as he goes to visit friends, and then as he's there, this mysterious affair happens. He's at Styles, obviously, and he had recently bumped into his friend Hercule Poirot in town, and so when this happens, there's a mystery behind it, and he's like, I know the right person who can help us. And so he gets Hercule Poirot to come, and it's really where we're introduced to this wonderful character who she then writes many other books following. And we just kind of follow his thought process, but through the eyes of Hastings, as to what happened and who's responsible. I actually ended up buying this book after my grandmother passed away because Agatha Christie was her favorite author, and I had read another book by her while she was still alive, but as like a way to maybe kind of connect with our love of reading, I wanted to give Agatha Christie another shot, and I'm glad I did, honestly. Now, this is obviously an older book. It's not as recent as others, but Agatha Christie really did a lot for the mystery genre, and there's a reason that she's like the queen of it, and this book was the perfect example of that. I thought it was a great mystery story. I love the character of Poirot, and I hope to continue reading. I do have another book, the next book in the series as well, so I may read that, but I just really found the characters very interesting, and I found his character particularly very charming, and it was a great little mystery book. I ended up giving it 4 stars, but definitely recommend. The next book I read was actually for the YA book club for Barnes & Noble. They ended up doing a live stream video instead of obviously meeting in person because we can't at this time. However, I finished the book in time, but when the live stream was on, forgot about it, and so I ended up not watching it, which was a little disappointing. But the book is Most Likely by Sarah Watson. So in this book, we follow 4 girls on their senior year of high school as they kind of finish their year. There was a playground that traditionally all of the seniors would go and carve their name in, but when their turn comes around, the playground has been locked up, and it's announced that they're going to be knocking it down and building something there in its place. Each of these girls kind of everyone's upset, but each of these girls kind of reacts differently, and it follows them and kind of how they respond to that and just how they go through their senior year as a whole. But the thing of it is, one of these girls will become President of the United States. And so throughout the whole story, you don't know who it is. So it's really kind of a guessing game as you're reading it as to which one of these girls will at the end be the President of the United States. You get to know all of their different personalities and really why all 4 of them would be very good at the job, but you don't know who it is until the very end. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was very well written. When I saw that the person who wrote this was a screenwriter and the different different shows that she has written on, it made sense to me. It definitely read in that same way as those kind of shows. Perfect YA. I thought it was very well done. I had a lot of fun reading it. It wasn't necessarily my favorite book that I've read in this time, or my favorite YA book even that I read in this time, but it was super enjoyable, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. The next book I read was Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This book I have heard about so many times across BookTube about how wonderful it is and how everyone should read it, and I've wanted to for the longest time, but I honestly couldn't find a copy of it anywhere. And then I was at Barnes & Noble and I had picked up other books that I was gonna buy. I wasn't even planning on this, and I saw this one when I walked past the shelf, and I had to backtrack, and I think I ended up putting something else away and picking this one up instead. Now, it's a short little book, but it packs a punch, and honestly, there is information out there. If you want the information, go and get it. There's different doorways to different worlds, and all of these young people somehow open them and go through them. The doors kind of present themselves to the different people. It's all these different magical worlds, but this story follows them once they've come back. And honestly, like I said, information is out there if you want it, but I think the less you know going into this book, the better. Just know that it is super magical, and if that is something that you are into, then this is a must read. I gave it 5 stars if that wasn't obvious. Ooh, what I forgot to mention. This is the first book I read for the Stay at Home Readathon, which happened for a weekend in April. I ended up reading 3 of the 4 books that weekend and didn't quite finish the 4th one in time. But I did all of the Instagram challenges, which is actually really impressive for me because usually I don't do any of the challenges and I just try to read and I don't get anywhere near what the final number is. So I was happy with that, but that was actually the reason why I picked this one up. It fulfilled the challenge of reading a book in the same place. That's what I read this one for. There was also a challenge to read a book with a place you would like to go. I thought about it afterwards. I was like, I should have picked like a bookstore. Like I have books about bookstores and stuff, just because I'm missing those now. But no, I initially thought like somewhere I'd like to travel to, and I ended up, I didn't have a ton that fulfilled that, but I did end up reading The Internship of Pippa Darling by Stephanie Keyes. I know she writes under another like pseudonym, and I don't remember what that is, but I think that's what she writes her adult novels under. So, hi.
Isn't it on a bookmark?
Thank you. So as I was doing that, Jocelyn reminded me that we have a bookmark that we got with her name on it, and it's Gemma McKay is what she usually writes her adult novels under. And this one, it still says Stephanie Keyes, but I think that's because this is like an early iteration of it. She said a limited edition, shirtless version. And so how I got this book and how I ended up learning about Stephanie Keyes is actually when I moved down to this area, there is a coffee shop that's not too far away that we were going to, and Jocelyn actually saw that they were advertising there was going to be like a book signing with this author who's from around here, and that ended up being Stephanie Keyes. Now, I hadn't been familiar with her before that, but I was very interested in the idea of, I've never been to like a book signing or anything, and I would love to like expand my horizons, learn about all different kind of people, and because she was local, I thought that was super cool. This is the second book that I've read by Stephanie Keyes. The first one was The Spellbinder Sonata. That one I believe I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed that one, and that one was a YA book, which, like I said, that's what she writes under Stephanie Keyes. Under Gemma McKay, she writes adult romance books. I personally am not a huge person into romance books, but this one takes place in Ireland, which is why it fulfilled the goal of read a book of a place where you would like to go. Pippa Darling goes on this internship, and it's for her least favorite author on the planet. And when she goes, she brings the book of her favorite author And Finn Burke, who is the author that she's going to work with, has a huge problem with that. He wants nothing to do with that book, doesn't want to see it. It's a romance book, and it follows that. And it was nice. I enjoyed the setting. I enjoy Stephanie's writing style for the most part, so it wasn't necessarily that, but the story did not really do it for me. For starters, there was like insta-love, which I'm not a fan of, but also like this really drawn out, we can't because you're my intern, but like he kissed her real early on, and then like for a character that I found completely bland, apparently she was the most interesting person in the world and the only one that could help him. And I do think that for people who enjoy romance, there's a reason it's written that way. It's so you can self-insert yourself into the character and like you can be the one for him and whatever. But for me, it just didn't really do anything. But I do enjoy her writing, and I can't even, because this isn't a genre I get into very often, can't even say like definitively if it is good or bad for the genre. I definitely will be reading more of 70 Keys, but I don't know if I'm really going to go much more into her romance novels. I ended up giving this one 2 stars. The next challenge was a book that make you smile, and for that I read The Odd Ones Out, How to Be Cool and Other Things I Definitely Learned from Growing Up by James Rowson, and this is exactly what I knew it would be. I smiled from ear to ear reading this whole book. I love the Odd Ones Out YouTube channel. The animations are adorable and the stories are hilarious, and that's exactly what this book delivered. If you're a fan of the channel, you're going to be a fan of the book. I gave it 5 stars. And the last book is the one that I didn't finish by the time that the Reading Rush weekend was over, but I did finish in the following week, so it fit into April, and that is a book with a house on the cover, and for that I read The Haunting of Blackwood House by Darcy Coates. So this book is a haunted house story, and it, for me, was kind of the perfect haunted house story. I love scary stories that are more spooky and creepy and kind of like leave you on the edge, but I don't like gory stuff. So I tend to have that in the back of my mind when I'm watching scary movies and stuff. I enjoy them, but there's kind of like a limited, very specific niche of what I truly enjoy. This book was the perfect example of that. It had everything. It had the creaking floorboards and, you know, the scary story and all of that. It was very well done. The atmosphere was wonderful, and while some of it I personally found a little hard to believe, like for instance the fact that this woman just moved into this creepy old house without doing anything to spruce it up first, was a little weird to me. But I mean, for some people maybe that is what they would do. I personally would want to have the roof fixed first. It was very well done. I enjoyed reading it. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and the only thing that really held it back from being 5 stars is it is nothing you haven't seen before. Even like the twists at different points and stuff, like I saw coming. There was nothing that is completely new or anything, but it still did its job, which is why I loved this book. Like I said, the only thing keeping it away from 5 stars is because it has all been done before, but this does it very well. So these are all the books I read this year. These are all the books I read this month in April. Let me know what you think of any of them. Were there some that you've personally read? And did you like them? No? Feel free to comment all that below. Are there any that you're interested in, maybe that you hadn't heard of before, or you have? And I'd love to hear from all of you, all of your thoughts, whether you liked it or not. But if you did like it, feel free to leave a thumbs up or to subscribe to see more videos that I'll be putting out, hopefully in the near future. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, don't forget to share them smiles. Ciao for now, friends.